I'm Rick Harper. I'm 55, a mechanic by trade, and I own a small auto repair shop in town. Life hasn't been easy, but I've always believed in hard work and family. My wife Susan and I have been married for 25 years. We raised 3 kids: Megan, my eldest from a previous marriage, married to Michael; David, my restless 30-year-old son with Susan; and Emily, my quiet youngest daughter. Today felt like any other. I finished my shift, wiped the grease off my hands, and decided to take a shortcut home by walking past Megan and Michael's place. Something about the day made me want to stop by, maybe just to say hello. As I neared their house, my eyes caught something unusual: Susan's car parked right by the gate. I frowned. She was supposed to be at her book club downtown, hours away. I figured maybe plans changed. I walked closer, about to knock on the door, when I suddenly heard it. Laughter. Then, voices. Too close. Too familiar. Then, something else, a sound that stopped me cold. I wasn't ready for what came next. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky orange as I approached the house. My heart thumped a little faster when I saw Susan's car parked by the gate. It wasn't just any car, it was her car. The same one she had driven for years, the one I always joked was her second home. I stepped closer, curiosity mixing with a strange unease. Susan was never one to sneak around or keep secrets from me. Or at least, she hadn't been, not until recently. The gate was slightly ajar, creaking softly in the breeze. I almost turned back. Maybe I shouldn't be here. But something pushed me forward. Then, faintly at first, I heard voices. I stopped just out of sight, near the corner of the porch. The words were muffled but clear enough to catch. "Are you sure it's safe?" a man's voice asked. I froze. That voice, smooth, confident. It wasn't Michael, my son-in-law, but someone else. "Relax," my wife's voice whispered back, tinged with laughter. "No one suspects a thing." My hands clenched into fists. Susan, here, saying things like this. Then the unmistakable sound of laughter, light, secretive, almost mocking. And then, another sound. It hit me like a punch to the gut. The unmistakable noise of intimacy. My breath caught. I stepped back, heart pounding so loud I was sure they'd hear. For a moment, I couldn't move. Susan, here, with another man. Betrayal tasted bitter in my mouth. Years of marriage, and now this. But then came the cold rage. The kind that doesn't scream or shout, but burns slow and steady. I needed answers. But more than that, I needed a plan. I stayed frozen for a few more moments, the scene unfolding like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The soft voices, the laughter, the unmistakable sounds. It wasn't just that Susan was here, it was who she was with, and what they were planning. I crept closer, careful to stay hidden in the shadows near the porch. The man's voice came clearer now, smooth, sly. I recognized it immediately. It was not Michael, my son-in-law, but someone I never expected. A stranger. Someone who didn't belong in my family or life. "She's perfect," the man said, his tone cold but amused. "You said she's on board?" Susan's voice was steady, but there was something darker beneath her calm words. "I am. This is for our future, for everything we want. Rick doesn't need to know. He won't stand in our way." My heart sank. Our future? What the hell was she talking about? The man chuckled softly. "You're doing the right thing. Once we get the house and the money, he'll be out. No one will believe him. He's just an old mechanic. You and we're smart. We play this right, and we get everything." I clenched my jaw so tight my teeth hurt. They were talking about me. About taking my home, my life, everything I'd worked for. Susan laughed again, low and satisfied. "He's been distracted lately. He doesn't see what's coming." The man replied, "And your daughter Megan? She's on the fence. She's loyal to Michael. They have their plans too. David's involved as well, my son. He's playing both sides, but he'll come around when the money's right. My hands trembled. My own blood, scheming behind my back. The man said, "You won't regret this. After tonight, it's only a matter of time. You'll be free." I couldn't take it anymore. The betrayal was suffocating. All these years, trusting her, and this is how she repaid me? With lies, secret meetings, plotting to steal my life? But I swallowed the rage. I didn't yell. I didn't storm in. I backed away, every step heavy, burning with cold fury. I needed a plan. If they thought I was weak, they were dead wrong. I'd been a mechanic all my life. Patient, methodical. Now I would apply that to my own life. The truth would come out. The lies would unravel. And those who betrayed me would pay. I walked away from the house that evening with a heavy heart and a mind spinning in 1,000 directions. The cold night air bit at my skin, but I barely noticed. My hands were clenched into fists, knuckles white. I replayed every word I had heard, every laugh, every whisper that sealed the betrayal. Susan, my wife of 25 years, plotting behind my back with a stranger, someone I'd never seen before. I had so many questions. How long had this been going on? Was it just the two of them, or were others involved? Was this why Susan had grown distant lately? Had my own family turned against me? My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Emily, my youngest daughter. The sweet, quiet girl who had always been close to me. "Dad, can we talk? I feel like things are falling apart." I looked up at the darkening sky, then back at the empty street. I didn't want to drag Emily into this mess yet. I wasn't ready to admit how deep the betrayal went. But maybe, just maybe, she could be my ally. The next morning, I tried to keep calm. I went to work like any other day, fixing cars, wiping grease off my hands, and smiling politely at my customers. But inside, I was a storm. I thought about Michael, my son-in-law. He was always polite, charming, but I'd sensed something off about him from the start. Now I knew why. He was involved, the smooth-talking man Susan was so close with? That wasn't him. No, this stranger was someone else, someone dangerous. I called Tom Benson, my old friend and former private detective. Tom was sharp, trusted, and knew how to handle complicated situations. "Tom, I need your help," I said, voice low and steady. "It's about my wife and some serious betrayal. I think they're planning to take everything from me." Tom was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Rick, you've been through a lot. But you're stronger than you think. Let me start digging. We'll get to the bottom of this." His calm confidence was the first flicker of hope I'd felt in days. Later that day, I met with Emily. Her eyes were tired, full of worry. "Dad, I don't know everything," she said softly, "but I've seen Mom acting strange. And David, he's been secretive too. I think they're hiding something big." David, my son, once so full of promise, now always dodging my questions, always needing money. Had he been part of this conspiracy all along? I realized I couldn't trust anyone blindly anymore. Not Susan, not Michael, not even my own blood. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, mind racing. I had to be smart, patient. I had to gather proof. Real evidence that no one could deny. Because this wasn't just about money or a house. It was about respect. About dignity. About taking back my life. And if they thought I'd just let it all slip away, they were dead wrong. The days that followed were a blur of forced smiles and hidden pain. I went through the motions, working in my shop, fixing engines, chatting with regulars, but my mind was miles away, tangled in thoughts of betrayal and broken trust. Susan's laughter, the stranger's voice, their whispered plans, they echoed in my head like a sinister song I couldn't escape. I found myself walking past Megan and Michael's house more often than necessary, always careful to remain unseen. I needed proof, undeniable proof, to expose what was happening behind closed doors. But how do you catch shadows and lies? One evening, I sat in my truck parked a block away from their place, the engine humming softly beneath me. I pulled out an old recorder Tom had given me years ago, a little device meant for taking notes but perfect for capturing secrets. I pressed record and leaned against the window, waiting. Minutes passed like hours. The sun dipped below the horizon, and then I heard it, voices. "Are you sure Rick won't find out?" Susan's voice, calm but firm. "Not a chance," the stranger replied smoothly. "We've covered all the tracks. After tonight, the house will be ours." My blood ran cold. It wasn't just talk anymore, it was a plan. A calculated scheme to erase me from everything I'd built. But something inside me stirred, a quiet resolve, burning brighter with each passing moment. I was no longer a victim, I was a man ready to fight back. I remembered all the years I'd poured into my family. Late nights fixing cars, early mornings making sure bills were paid, birthdays missed because I was working double shifts. And now, when I needed them most, they turned their backs. The thought fueled my determination. I called Tom the next morning. "We need to move. I want you to dig into that stranger, find out who he really is. And I want to know everything about Michael's business. If they think they can take me down with money and lies, they're in for a surprise." Tom's voice was steady. "I'm on it, Rick. We'll bring the truth into the light." I also reached out to Emily, hoping she could give me insight into David. The son who'd once been full of promise, now a shadow lurking on the edges of my life. Emily admitted quietly, "David's been acting strange. He owes money to some dangerous people. I think Michael's been helping him, but not for free." Betrayal after betrayal. My family was falling apart, and I was watching it crumble like a house of cards. But I wasn't going to let it end like this. That night, I sat alone in the dim light of my living room, staring at an old family photo. Smiling faces frozen in happier times. Susan, Megan, David, Emily. All the people I loved, all the people who had abandoned me. My hands clenched the photo tighter. I whispered to myself, "You think you can break me? You're wrong." The battle had just begun. The morning light crept through the blinds, casting long shadows across my workshop. The smell of motor oil mixed with fresh coffee, a comforting reminder of simpler times. But I wasn't here for comfort. I was here to plan. Tom Benson was my oldest friend, a man I trusted more than anyone. We had shared more than a few late nights sorting through problems, and now I needed him like never before. The kind of help only a seasoned private detective could provide. I met Tom at our usual diner, a quiet corner booth where we could talk without interruption. He looked up from his coffee, eyes sharp beneath the rim of his weathered hat. "So, Rick," he said, his voice low and steady. "What's the story?" I told him everything. About Susan's betrayal, the stranger, the secret conversations. About Michael's business dealings and David's shadowy debts. I laid it all out, no sugarcoating, no hesitation. Tom listened carefully, nodding as I spoke. When I finished, he leaned back, steepling his fingers. "This isn't just a family spat. This is a calculated takedown," he said. "They're cutting you out, financially, emotionally. But they're sloppy. Everyone makes mistakes." "Then help me find them," I said. "I want names, places, proof. I want this conspiracy exposed." Tom smiled faintly. "Already working on it. I have contacts who can trace that stranger, dig into Michael's books, find out who's paying off David's debts." Relief washed over me. For the first time since that awful evening, I felt a flicker of hope. "We need to be smart," Tom warned. "They'll try to cover their tracks. You have to stay calm, act like nothing's wrong. Let them think you're oblivious." I nodded. I was used to patience. Life had taught me that. After our meeting, I returned to my shop, where the familiar rhythm of work grounded me. I cleaned tools, fixed engines, but my mind was always half a step ahead, planning, watching. That afternoon, Emily called. Her voice was hesitant, almost scared. "Dad, I want to help," she said. "I can get close to Mom, find out what she's really thinking. Maybe I can talk to David too." I felt a swell of gratitude. Emily had always been the quiet heart of the family. Maybe now, she could be its voice of reason. "We'll do this together," I promised. Over the next few days, Tom sent me updates, a name linked to the stranger, suspicious bank transfers in Michael's business accounts, and whispers about David's dealings with dangerous people. Each piece of information was another brick in the wall I was building, a wall to protect what was mine and to bring those who betrayed me to justice. Late one night, as I locked up the shop, I stood under the street lamp, staring at the darkened house across the street, Megan and Michael's home. I whispered to the night, "You think you're winning, but you haven't seen the last of me." The battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. The following week was a tense game of shadows and whispers. Every day I put on the mask of the oblivious husband, the easygoing father, while underneath, I was gathering every scrap of evidence I could find. I knew that rushing in blind would only give them the upper hand. I needed patience, precision, and allies. Tom had already begun his investigations. His contacts uncovered the stranger's real identity, a man named Robert Lang, a small-time con artist with a history of fraud and manipulation. Robert had slipped into our lives like a shadow, quietly weaving a web of deceit around Susan and my family. Armed with this knowledge, I knew that Robert was more dangerous than I had imagined. But it also meant that their alliance was fragile. Con artists like him rarely stay loyal for long. Meanwhile, Michael's business was under scrutiny. Tom uncovered irregularities, fake invoices, shady transactions, and secret offshore accounts. It was clear that Michael was laundering money, and this was the key to hitting him where it hurt. Then there was David, my son. Once bright and full of promise, now tangled in debts and dangerous associations. Tom discovered that David owed thousands to a local loan shark named Vince. Worse, Vince was known for his ruthless methods. I spent sleepless nights thinking about how to turn this knowledge into leverage. The family I had built, the trust one had given, was crumbling. But I wasn't ready to give up. One evening, Emily stopped by the shop after work. She looked exhausted but determined. "Dad," she said quietly, "I talked to Mom today. She's getting more reckless. She's talking about selling the house and disappearing with Robert." My heart sank. Losing the house wasn't just losing property. It was losing the last piece of our history. "Do you think she'll go through with it?" I asked. Emily shook her head. "She's scared but stubborn. She thinks she can get away with it. But if we expose Robert and Michael, maybe we can stop her." That night, I called Tom. "We need to act," I said firmly. "We have enough to start dismantling their plan. But we have to be careful, one wrong move and they'll disappear." Tom agreed. "I'm ready. Let's take the first step." The next days were filled with quiet moves, sending anonymous tips to Michael's business partners, discreetly gathering video evidence near Robert's known hideouts, and tracing Vince's loan operations. Each small victory built momentum. One afternoon, as I was leaving the shop, I saw a black SUV parked near the street. A man stepped out, watching the building. His gaze was sharp, calculating. I recognized him instantly. Vince. My pulse quickened. The danger was real. They were starting to feel the pressure, and they weren't going down without a fight. I kept my distance but made a mental note. It was time to prepare for whatever came next. The war had escalated. And I was ready. The days turned darker as the tension in the air grew thicker. I knew that with Vince showing up near my shop, the stakes had escalated beyond family drama. This was now about survival. David, my son, had always been a wild card. A talented kid with a restless spirit, he was never easy to keep on track. But now, I realized how deeply he'd fallen into the shadows, pulled by debts and dangerous promises. That afternoon, I decided to confront him directly. David was sitting on the cracked steps of an old diner, cigarette in hand, eyes tired and wary. "David," I began cautiously, "we need to talk." He looked up, surprise flashing across his face. Dad? What's going on? I sat beside him, steadying my voice. I know about the money you owe. About Vince. His jaw tightened. You don't understand. I want to. But you have to be honest. Who else is involved? David hesitated, then sighed deeply. It's Michael. He's been helping me, but it's more like control. I owe him as much as Vince now. They're connected, it's all one ugly mess. The betrayal hit harder than I expected. My own son, caught in a trap laid by my daughter's husband. We need to get you out, I said firmly. But I can't do it alone. David nodded slowly, eyes reflecting a mix of shame and desperation. I want out, Dad. I don't want this life. That night, I met with Tom and Emily to share what I'd learned. Emily's face was pale but resolute. We have to hit them where it hurts, Tom said, pulling out a folder filled with documents and photos. Michael's offshore accounts, Robert's criminal record, Vince's loan shark operations, it's all connected. We can expose them, Emily added, but we have to be smart. If they catch wind, they'll vanish. The plan began to take shape. Tom would feed evidence anonymously to the authorities and key business partners. I would keep an eye on Susan and Robert, hoping to catch more proof. Emily promised to keep David safe and gather intel from inside the family. Days later, I returned home to find Susan waiting. Her eyes were cold, unreadable. Rick, she said softly, we need to talk. I didn't respond. I had nothing left to say. But inside, I felt the weight of what was coming. The final act of this family tragedy was approaching, and I had to be ready. Susan's unexpected visit unsettled me. Her calm voice and steady gaze betrayed nothing, but I felt the cold distance between us like a wall. 25 years of marriage, and now everything seemed like a fragile illusion. I thought we could talk, she said, stepping inside my workshop. Maybe find some kind of peace. I wiped my hands on a rag, avoiding her eyes. There's nothing to say. She sighed softly. Rick, I made mistakes. But you have to understand. I was lost. Lost. I echoed bitterly. You left me for another man. You lied to my face. What exactly were you lost in? Susan looked down, silence stretching between us. I didn't plan for it to go this far, she admitted. Robert, he promised a way out. Something different. I thought it would be better. But it's all spiraling. Her confession didn't soften my anger. If anything, it sharpened it. We're done, I said firmly. I'm done being the fool who believes in things that aren't real. Susan's eyes flashed with something. Regret? Defiance. I couldn't tell. She took a step back. You're not the man you used to be. Maybe not, I replied. But I'm still the man who's going to take back what's his. After she left, I sat alone in the dim light, the weight of her words lingering. That night, Tom called with news. We found something, Rick. Michael's offshore accounts, there's been millions moved around. And Robert. He's connected to some serious players. This is bigger than we thought. The web was wider and darker than I'd imagined. I realized then that this wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was a criminal conspiracy. But I had allies. Tom, Emily, and even David, who was slowly turning from a lost son to a partner in this fight. The house I'd built was crumbling, but the foundation of my resolve was stronger than ever. I was ready to watch their shadows burn. The news from Tom hit me like a hammer. Millions moved through Michael's offshore accounts, Robert's connections to dangerous players. This wasn't just about family betrayal, it was organized deception, a plan to strip me of everything I owned. I spent the next days planning the perfect counterstrike. Michael's arrogance was his weakness. He thrived on control, on feeling untouchable. I would use that against him. Tom's network of contacts proved invaluable. Through discreet channels, we started sending anonymous tips to the financial authorities, highlighting suspicious activities tied to Michael's business. Small, carefully placed nudges designed to trigger investigations without exposing our hand too soon. Meanwhile, I reached out to some of my longtime clients and acquaintances who had connections in the local business community. It wasn't easy. Many feared Michael's influence, but I reminded them who I was, the man who built his life from scratch, a man who wouldn't go down quietly. A plan began to take shape. If the financial pressure mounted, Michael's empire would start to crumble. When the house of cards collapsed, their entire scheme would unravel. But it wasn't just about money. I needed to protect what mattered most: the memories, the legacy of years spent building a family and a home. One afternoon, as I was working on a customer's car, my phone buzzed. It was Emily. "Dad," she said, voice tense. "Mom's getting desperate. She's talking about selling the house soon, maybe running away with Robert. We have to act fast." I felt a cold resolve wash over me. The clock was ticking. I called David, urging him to stay clear of Vince and his men. "We'll get you out of this," I promised. "But you need to keep your head down." David's voice cracked. "I'm scared, Dad. But I trust you." That trust became my anchor. That night, I sat alone in the dim light, staring at the old family photos on the wall. Faces frozen in happier times. Susan, Megan, David, Emily, reminders of a life I wasn't ready to lose. The war was far from over. But with every move, I was taking back control. And when the final showdown came, I would be ready. The tension in the family was no longer hidden beneath polite smiles or forced greetings. It cracked open, raw and painful, at the worst possible moment, during a dinner meant to bring us all together. Megan, my eldest daughter from my previous marriage, was there with Michael. I could see the weariness in her eyes, a mix of betrayal, anger, and confusion. She had always been the strong one, the responsible one, but tonight even she seemed fragile. The moment Michael's phone buzzed loudly on the table, everyone's eyes flicked to it. Megan snatched it up, and what she saw changed everything. A text message, from an unknown number, full of threats and demands tied to Vince, the loan shark. It was clear Michael's world was unraveling. Megan's voice trembled as she confronted him. "How deep are you in, Michael? And what does this have to do with Dad's money?" Michael's usual charm faded. His eyes darkened with anger. "You don't understand. I'm doing what's necessary for our family." "For our family?" Megan shot back. "You've been lying to all of us. To Dad. To me." The room froze. Susan sat silently, avoiding my gaze. David shifted uncomfortably in his chair, unable to meet anyone's eyes. I felt a storm inside me, disappointment, betrayal, but also a flicker of hope. The cracks were showing. The perfect facade was breaking. After the tense dinner, Megan pulled me aside. Her voice was low, but fierce. "Dad, I don't know everything yet, but I want to help. I can't keep pretending." Her support meant everything. If even Michael's wife was turning, then maybe this house of cards could fall. Later, Emily called again. "Dad, Mom's been calling Robert more frequently. They're planning something bigger." I'm worried. My mind raced. Time was running out. The family I once trusted was now the battlefield where the war for my life was being fought. But I was ready. Because sometimes, the deepest betrayals reveal the strongest truths. And I would use those truths to rebuild, and to take back what was mine. The moment of truth came sooner than I expected. The tension in the family had reached a boiling point, and I knew I couldn't wait any longer. It was time to bring everything into the light, to expose the betrayal, the lies, and the conspiracies that had shattered my life. I arranged for a family gathering under the pretense of a celebration, an anniversary, a moment to remember the past and look toward the future. The truth was, I wanted everyone under one roof when the storm hit. The evening began with forced smiles and awkward conversations. Susan arrived late, her eyes cold and calculating. Michael tried to charm everyone, but even he couldn't hide his unease. Megan and Emily exchanged glances, their support quiet but undeniable. As the main course was cleared, I stood up, my hands steady despite the chaos inside me. "I have something to show you all," I said, my voice calm but firm. From my pocket, I pulled out a small tablet. I tapped the screen, and the room was filled with the unmistakable sound of recorded voices, Susan's and Robert's, plotting to take over the house and steal everything from me. Gasps filled the room. Susan's face drained of color, while Michael's jaw clenched tightly. Then I played the evidence Tom had uncovered, bank statements, email exchanges, and financial transactions linking Michael to offshore accounts and illegal dealings. The weight of truth settled like a hammer. Megan stood, her voice shaking but strong. "How could you, Michael? How could you betray Dad, and all of us?" Michael's facade crumbled. "It was for survival. For us. For us." I echoed. "No. It was for greed. For selfishness." Susan tried to speak, but the room was deaf to her excuses. David looked down, ashamed but relieved. The truth was finally out. In that moment, I saw the family I once knew beginning to fracture completely. But I also saw something else. A chance for justice, for retribution, for healing. I finished the night knowing the battle was far from over. But now, everyone knew the truth. And that made all the difference. The fallout from that night was immediate and brutal. The family, once tightly knit by years of shared memories and struggles, shattered like glass under the weight of truth. The revelation of Susan's betrayal and Michael's deceit left scars deeper than I had imagined. Michael's empire crumbled faster than I expected. Financial institutions froze his accounts. Business partners distanced themselves, unwilling to be tainted by his scandal. He was left exposed, vulnerable, and furious. The charming man I once tolerated was gone, replaced by a man desperate and broken. Susan, stripped of her carefully crafted facade, found herself isolated. Friends and neighbors whispered behind her back, the woman who had betrayed her family now a pariah in her own community. She moved out of the house within weeks, leaving behind the life she once knew. David, my son, was the hardest to watch. Torn between loyalty and guilt, he struggled to find his place in the chaos. Without Michael's support and shackled by his debts, he faced the consequences of his choices alone. But in the darkest moments, he began to show signs of change, a desire to rebuild, to make amends. Megan and Emily stood by me through it all, their strength a beacon in the storm. Megan took on the role of protector, fiercely defending what remained of our family. Emily's quiet resolve reminded me that even in brokenness, hope could be found. Despite the pain, I refused to let bitterness consume me. I focused on rebuilding, my business, my relationships, my life. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but I was determined to walk it with my head held high. One evening, Tom and I sat on the porch, the cool air heavy with silence. He broke it softly. "You did what you had to do, Rick. You stood up for yourself and your family." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "It's not over yet," he added. "But you've taken the first step toward justice." I looked up at the stars, thinking of the future. The past would always haunt me, but it wouldn't define me. This was my story, a story of betrayal, pain, and ultimately, redemption. And it was far from finished. The weeks following the family's unraveling were some of the hardest I'd ever faced. The house felt emptier, colder, but the silence was a reminder that I had a chance to rebuild, to reclaim my life from the wreckage Susan and the others left behind. I poured myself into my work, the rhythmic clanging of tools and engines a kind of therapy. Each car I fixed was a small victory, a step forward away from the betrayal that had nearly destroyed me. My shop became a fortress, a place where I could control something in a world gone chaotic. Emily became my steady companion. She helped with the business books, managed appointments, and kept the family's frayed edges from falling apart completely. Megan, too, stepped up, becoming fiercely protective, especially over David, who was slowly trying to repair his mistakes. David wasn't the son I'd hoped for, but he was the son I had, and I was determined not to lose him to his own demons. We had many tough conversations, raw and honest, and though the road to forgiveness was long, I could see flickers of the boy he once was. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Megan and I sat on the porch, sharing a quiet moment. She looked at me, eyes filled with a mixture of pain and hope. "Dad," she said softly, "we can get through this. We have to." Her words were a bomb. I realized that the family wasn't gone. It was fractured, yes, but not broken beyond repair. Meanwhile, Tom's investigations continued. He discovered more about Robert Lang, the con artist who'd pulled Susan into his schemes. Turns out, Robert had a trail of broken lives behind him, and he was about to pay for what he did to mine. One morning, Tom called. "We've got enough evidence to bring Lang down for good. He won't slip through the cracks this time." Justice, it seemed, was finally within reach. But there was still one thing left unresolved, the deep wound of Susan's betrayal. I needed to confront it, not just for me but for the family's future. I wrote her a letter. Simple, honest. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't expect it. I just needed to say goodbye to the past so I could move forward. In the quiet moments before sleep, I held on to the hope that healing was possible. That trust could be rebuilt, piece by piece. And that one day, the shadows of betrayal would give way to the light of redemption. The days slowly grew lighter as I stepped out of the shadows cast by betrayal and deceit. After all the storms, the pain, and the heartbreak, something new was beginning to take shape, a fragile, tentative hope that whispered of redemption and fresh starts. The house that once echoed with arguments and silence now hummed softly with the sounds of healing. Emily had taken charge of the day-to-day at the shop, and Megan was helping David find steady work, guiding him back from the edge. David himself was changing. No longer the reckless boy drowning in debts and lies. He was slowly becoming a man determined to earn back the trust he had shattered. The road was long, and there were setbacks, nights of frustration, harsh words, and self-doubt, but the determination was there. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I sat on the porch with Emily and Megan. The three of us, fractured but unbroken, shared stories, laughter, and dreams. For the first time in a long time, it felt like family. Tom's investigation into Robert Lang had culminated in his arrest. The man who had once woven a web of lies around us was finally brought to justice. Knowing that helped close a painful chapter, though the scars remained. I thought about Susan. The letter I'd sent her remained unanswered, but I found peace in releasing the need for closure. Some wounds heal only when you let go of the pain. I also found a renewed sense of purpose in my work and life. The shop was thriving again, a symbol of resilience and hard work. But more than that, it was a reminder that even in the darkest times, you can rebuild, stronger and wiser. The past would always be a part of me, but it no longer controlled me. As I looked out into the twilight sky, I whispered to myself, "This is not the end. It's a new beginning." And for the first time in years, I believed it. Thank you for spending this time with us. If the story moved you, even a little, let us know. Drop a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more stories that stay with you long after the screen fades. Your support means more than you know.